Gotta wait. 3, 2, 1, yeah. Yay, bingo. Right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Hub meeting. Mr. White, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, members. We've got no apologies for this afternoon's meeting. Thank you.
Yay, everybody's here. Item 2 is declarations of interest. We all know the rules. If anything comes up or if anyone's got anything to declare now. No. Okay, so we'll move on. Items requiring urgent attention. I don't have any. Should I have any? No, that's fine as well. Right. If we'd like to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting on the 28th of January 2025, that's pages 1 to 10 of the agenda. As there's 10 pages, I'm not going through them. So does anybody have any queries or anything else on them? No. So I will propose the minutes.
Happy to second.
All those in favour? Thank you very much.
Yes, carried. Thank you.
Public questions, I'm not aware of any. We're not having anything, are we, Mr. White?
That's correct, Leader. We've received no public questions. Thank you.
Right, that's really good. That leads us on to the item 6, pages 11 to 14, the Hub Committee Forward Plan. Pages 12 and 13 and a bit are for today's meeting. So everything that we'll be going through there. We seem to have a nice short list for the April meeting. Is everybody happy that what is on there will be going ahead with their portfolios? You happy because you've got 2?
Yes, I noticed that, yes.
Yes, you've noticed. Councillor Jury and myself, so that is it for them. And there's only a couple more items for June. One of them, the update to off-street parking. I've had a meeting with the staff this morning, and that's all in hand. And then Councillor Edmonds, that sounds like a bit of a busy title, the draft procurement strategy for June. Yeah. Are you? Good. Right, so if anyone's got any additions or anything that they think the portfolio is going to take forward, please liaise with your officers and get it added to the list. And hopefully not too many more for April. Right, so item 7, the council delivery plan. Today we are being asked to consider the 2025-28 delivery plan as set out in Appendix A and resourcing as set out in Appendix B. Recommending that Council adopt the delivery plan at its meeting on the 18th of March next week, and to recommend to Council to approve £507,000 of funding for the 2025-26 delivery plan from the revenue and capital reserves earmarked for the Council plan as set out in 4.1 of this report. As we all know, as all our portfolios, we all contribute towards this, so everybody is fully appraised. Does anyone have any questions, please? No, golly. Right, so I'm happy to propose that.
Happy to second.
Would anybody like any debate? I would just like to say I'm really pleased with how it's going, particularly the financial side, and that we have all of our money apportioned nice and neatly, our over and underspends, whatever we want to call them, that are now going to be able to be deployed into our council plan and to focus on what we wish to do as West Devon Borough Council. And to me, that's the most important bit. While we have this money at the moment, we need to make the best use of it while we're in the situation that we're in, that we can show how sensible and everything else we're being without being shown to be spending our money. So I'm really pleased with this and hope that, you know, for housing, which we have said is going to be our top priority, this is really good. So does anyone else have any questions or comments? Not questions, comments. Councillor Jury, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to echo your comments, really. I think it's a really excellent plan. It is corralling and putting our resources in the best possible place to deliver the services to the people of West Devon that they need. And I think it's testament to the way this council has been managed, the way that our finances have been managed, and our ambition to actually do some things that make a difference. That has been evident over a number of years. So it's an ongoing process, I know, but it is the end result of a lot of hard work by a lot of people, both members and officers, and I think it's a really, really good plan. So I'm certainly going to be voting in favour of the recommendations.
I think the one person I need to thank, and he's not even in the room. Oh, he's on leave. Oh, I could be really awful about him today, and I'm not going to be. We really need to thank Mr. Hawke. He has worked with all of us as portfolio holders. We get the opportunity to go through our little sections and add, delete as necessary to keep it a really working live document. And Mr. Hawke does that really well. So I would like, Mr. White, our appreciation to be noted for him. Right, anyone else, anything? No? Okay, then may I see a vote all in favour, please?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Right, moving to item 8 is the Housing Strategy Review, approval of next year's action plan and local development schemes, and you'll find this on page 43 of your agendas. Welcome, Ms Nixon.
Is it me? Am I on? Oh, sorry. The delivery plan that we've just spoken about has outlined our overreaching actions and primary aims for housing going forwards, and that this report also covers. In line with the requests on the screen, which I think you can see up there, it reviews the delivery of the previous action plan and the ask for approval of the action plan for next year, and also the request for delegation of any technical updates and submissions required under the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 with respect to the Council's local development scheme to the Director of Place and Enterprise in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning, Councillor Mott at the moment. Those of you who came to the previous Housing Advisory Group meeting will remember the author, that's Mrs Rickson over there, who was present today. This was that was the concise version, and this paper puts some meat on the bones and elaborates on that particular document. It is, I may add, excellently written paper and covers in depth our strategies for housing for place, housing for people, the housing crisis, the challenges ahead. So I'm not going to blabber on too much more. So thank you again, Mrs Rickson, who is with us for any questions. And also we've got the Head of Housing, Mrs Blake, at the back. Well, I don't. It's only as an acknowledgement. No, multicoloured cheers. It does it when she looks. Look at that. So if there's anybody any questions, I'll leave it open for the room.
Councillor Elliott, please.
Thank you very much. So firstly, thank you for such a detailed report, and it's really good to see how much is being done in this area, given it's one of our key priorities. I'm particularly keen that we carry on doing the preventative work that we're doing, and I note on page 51 it talks about making the best use and improving the quality of existing housing, and I'm thoroughly behind this. I mean, it takes time to build more houses, and we need to make sure people have got homes that are appropriate for them. So it was really just a question about the tenants' incentive scheme and encouraging people to downsize in social housing without sort of putting undue pressure on them, presumably. But I'd just love to hear a little bit more about anything that's being done in this area. Thank you.
So the tenants' incentive scheme is run to encourage people who have got larger properties than they need to move into at least one bedroom smaller, but ideally into the property most appropriate for their household. There is no pressure on people to do that. We do appreciate that people have got often lifetimes of memories in their homes, so it is very much about removing any barriers that might be stopping people that want to move. So, for example, if you're, the removal costs, changes in furniture, carpeting, curtains, those sorts of things. So it's not about trying to encourage people to make a move that would make them unhappy. It's about making people's ideal homes possible for them.
That's great. And is it possible to say any more about what you're doing or what's being done to promote the scheme? I mean, is it a sort of general publicity or is it targeting particular individuals with the information? Thank you.
So we work closely with registered providers to make sure that they make their tenants aware, but we also do at least a yearly mail drop. So we run a report on our Devon Home Choice system that tells us who is in a property too large for their needs. And we do a very friendly mail drop to them saying, don't forget about the Tenants Incentive Scheme. You could get up to X amount of money to help you with your moving costs. So we try to keep it sort of high profile, but not too high pressure.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much.
Just to add to that, do we still notify tenants who are in properties that we really would like them to downsize when a new development comes up? Because I know something like Godolphin House on the roundabout as you come into Tavistock, that had lots of people who downsized. And if you can get like particular developments, that is a really good incentive. And one of the biggest incentives now is if we say, we will manage doing the telecoms, because that, believe it or not, is one of the biggest barriers, isn't it, Steph? Because people are terrified they won't get anything back because of new areas. But, they get the money as an incentive as well, and the help that we now give. And the scheme, I first came across it at West Devon Homes when it was first introduced. So that's going back to about 2005. So it's worked well in Devon, but it doesn't in West Devon. But as you say, it may not be something that's highly advertised. But I think tenants, they used to and Councillor Cunningham might be able to answer this question, they used to, from social landlords, actually get a reminder every year that there is that opportunity for them to do it. He's going to answer me now.
Yes, with the company I work for, we used to put it in either a newsletter or send it round on with Sanctuary, that was. But also all the housing officers knew their patches very well, and therefore you knew who would probably be interested in downsizing or indeed moving into, because obviously we had a lot of rural properties in North Cornwall, and a lot of people wanted to move into, Tavistock, for instance. But it was mainly the housing officers and information sheets that went out.
Does that all help, Councillor Elliott?
Yes, that's a really helpful answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Thank you, Councillor West.
I'm surprised Councillor Elliott didn't ask this, as she's a data girl. Have we got any figures around the amount of people that have taken this up on the offer in the last year or so?
Yes, it should have been recorded in the report.
I may not have seen it, my apologies.
I can send those figures to you separately.
Yeah, that's fine. Just out of interest.
Does anyone else have any questions on this report? No? Right. Do you want to feed? But thank you for it, Mr. Rickson.
Yeah, thank you again, Steph. So the recommendation is on the board. I've already went through it on the thing, so I won't do it again. So that's my proposal. I have a seconder, please.
Councillor Mott, second. Any debate, anybody? No? All those in favour?
That's unanimous for the 3 recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Thank you for attendance, Steph. Mr. Swiss, are you going to come forward now? It's your turn. Right, before you get going, I know she's sat beside you, Graham, and I will be informal for this bit, but Ursula would like to extend a huge vote of thanks to you for all the assistance you have given her with this plan, for your dogged determination with her Rottweiler-like determination to get this through on time and everything else. I would like to thank former Councillor Mann, Ursula, for everything she has done on this, for every bit of pain that she particularly went through at Tavistock Town Council over this. Sometimes her life was made very, very difficult through this process. And our officers here have really helped her get through that time when I think she could have chucked it all up in the air and walked away quite happily. But as we all know for Ursula, she is not that woman. If Ursula says she's going to do something, you get 110% of her, if not 150%. She delivers everything with so much credibility and everything else. Ursula, on behalf of the council, I'm probably going to miss you more than some of the others, but we are all definitely going to miss you. You have become a friend to many in this room, and we know that your new career is where you are loving it, as you keep telling me. And thank you for everything you have done for West Devon. You have been an exemplar of a councillor. You really have. You have just got on with things, embraced things, and you have brought things to us that we might not have done, because we all need a bit of yank in our life, as I say to you occasionally. And Mark will love it when you finally get some English humour, because, as you know, he loves teasing you that you just do not get English humour. So thank you, Ursula, for everything you have given for this council. And as you know, I am going to miss you so, so much, but we're only down the road from each other. So thank you. Right, now I've got all emotional, and I wasn't going to. Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Leader. How do I follow that? Other than to say that I am absolutely delighted to introduce the report for the Tavistock Neighbourhood Plan. The area, as you know, was designated by this council in 2017, and following an independent examination, we now need to consider if we are content to allow the plan to proceed to referendum in alignment with the recommendations given on page 65 of the agenda. And like the leader, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Mann and her colleagues for the drive and the passion to be able to complete the plan and get it to this stage. It's all credit to you, Ursula. Well done. Thank you.
I don't think anybody dare ask any questions after all that. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Moody.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank everyone for all their support and the effort that's gone into this, particular to Ursula as well. And I think it's a very good document. The question I have is housing is our priority. And on page 166, the officer's report says that I would like to know that, are we still of the opinion that that there's no real priority for further housing site allocations, which is the top paragraph of page 166, which I think is page 34, is it, of the report? .34 it is, I think. Are we still of that opinion? Everyone got 166?
Are you there, Mr Swiss, that you can answer? Yeah. Councillor Mott, would you like to answer?
As members are aware, with the changes in the MPPF, it would suggest that we need to build more houses. However, as our local plan, joint local plan states at the moment, it is still relevant. Neighbourhood plans don't fall into quite the same rules and regulations. So I'm glancing at Mrs Swift for confirmation on this, that I don't drop myself completely in it. So I would say that with things as they are and all things being equal, then that statement is still correct.
Is that the officer view?
Swiss, please.
Just to add to that, the examiner made it very clear that the neighbourhood plan was examined under the provisions of the previous NPPF, so not the most recent December one, which of course is the one which has included further requirements for housing provision. And also the neighbourhood plan was examined under the context of the existing joint local plan, which again, through its own allocations for Tavistock and elsewhere, made provision that was adequate to meet the housing requirements at that time. So both in terms of strategic plan requirement and national guidance, the neighbourhood plan as submitted and examined was felt to meet the appropriate requirements and was in accordance with those higher level policies, etc. But of course, moving forward, looking ahead to any successor to the joint local plan, there will be through that process almost certainly requirements for an increased amount of housing provision. So I think it's appropriate that the strategic level plan comes first, and then that will provide a context for any subsequent new neighbourhood plans, or indeed any revisions or modifications to existing neighbourhood plans to take place within that overall strategic context provided by any future local plan.
Can I just come back? Where I'm confused is, from what you're saying, is that this plan is based on updated strategies. And where I'm confused is, are we voting today on historic data, or are we looking at this plan based on today's NPPF? That's where I'm coming from.
I'd like to say that this afternoon the planning reforms are being dropped. So, you know, how do you want it to be based, Councillor Moody?
All
because
I'm saying is
it was based on all of the policies that were in place at that time, but even this afternoon it could all change. And as I've said before, those housing numbers are not actually given to Tavistock.
I'm not
allocated.
disputing housing numbers or anything. All I'm saying is that the plan, which is a good plan, is based on old information. We now have new information. How does that affect our decision today? That's where I'm confused and how I should be voting.
I think in the long and short of it, Councillor Moody, the neighbourhood plan was submitted and examined with the policies that were in place at that time. Regardless of the fact that we now effectively have a new MPPF which has been updated, we take this plan in line with the policies that it was submitted against.
Right. But when does the plan get modified to accord to the new? Do you understand what I'm getting at? I'm not trying to be
It's not a significant enough change within the MPPF to make any difference.
So the
statements in the
document are
correct and solid. Yes,
that's
and sound.
Moody,
Thank you.
Mr. Fairburn would also like to come in now, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. One of the things that the committee has to be satisfied is that the plan meets the basic conditions. Basic conditions include that it's in line with statutory or government policy. And in terms of the NPPF, whilst it's it's made a number of changes in respect of housing numbers and delivery. The policies of the neighbourhood plan are still very much in line with the strategic policies of the NPPF, and therefore I think you can come to a view that, based on the information you've got today, the plan meets the basic conditions and therefore may proceed to referendum.
I thank you for that clarification. The new NPPF affects the 5-year land supply as well, and I'm confused how that works as well. I'm really, if we were having this conversation before December, you know, I understand it, but we're looking at a document that's produced before changes, and that's really where I'm coming from.
Councillor Mott, please.
Thank you. Again, Councillor Moody, for your clarity. The changes in the NPPF that have come forward since December do not affect the joint local plan, other than the fact that we need to deliver more housing. So effectively the numbers have changed. Every other policy within that document still stand and are still solid. This neighbourhood plan has been examined against that and the NPPF and all the other policies that were in place at the time. Therefore, this is still a sound document that can go forward for referendum. Mr. Baker, would you like to come and rescue me from this one?
From your beautiful sunny location, I think I commented on the other day.
And I have to admit that I am actually indoors and not in the woods. Good afternoon, members. I would just like to reiterate everything that Councillor Mott has said there, that the neighbourhood plan has been through all the processes it was required to go through. I recognise it's a difficult time in terms of transition, and people understand that there's a new national planning policy framework. That doesn't change the nature of the recommendations that you're being asked to vote on today. And as and when we get more clarity over what the plan making process is for new local plans, we can kind of consider the implications for neighbourhood plans going forward, but it doesn't change anything that you're being asked to vote on today.
Councillor West.
Not to speak for Councillor Moody, but I think his concern is born of, does it leave Tavistock vulnerable in terms of the current landscape moving forward around planning? Is that?
And the 5-year land supply.
The short and sweet answer to that is no.
And the short and sweet answer to the land supply is nowhere has a 5-year land supply in this country. So, because with what came in, it threw everybody's figures out the window. So, you know, we are where we are. Is there any other further debate, please? We haven't got... Councillor Mott, would you like to propose your recommendations, please?
Thank you, Leader. Members, I would like to propose the recommendations split over 2 screens on the big screen there. However, on page 65 of your agenda, numbers 1 to 7. I'm happy to read them out should you want me to, but I'm fairly sure everybody is able to whip through them. Thank you.
I'm more than happy to second that. Any debate, please? No, may I see a vote in favour?
So not quite debate, Leader. Perhaps should have said this before. It's wonderful to see another neighbourhood plan come forward. They do take an incredible amount of work and an incredible amount of commitment from the community and the committee that takes them on. So it is wonderful to see one come forward. I do understand and appreciate the absolute hard work that goes into them, and can understand why communities feel reluctant to take one on. But it is a worthwhile process, and as we've stated before, it is lovely to see one here before us now.
All those in favour, please. That's
8 in favour, thank you, Leader.
Thank you. All those against?
None against, Leader.
Abstentions?
And 1 abstention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ursula. Your time here is done. And I'm sure we will hopefully get a really good referendum result for it to go forward. So something extra for people of Tavistock to vote for.
Oh, can I just say thank you to everyone for your support, and especially on behalf of all of the committee members who were members of the community, not elected individuals, who gave up a lot of their free time for our community. So I just want to say thank you to the steering group as well.
Thank you. Right, Mrs. Proctor, your turn to come and face everyone. Don't need to find the page yet. Councillor Elliott, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I'd like to start by thanking Mrs. Proctor for all her hard work and dedication in pulling together the evidence that's underpinned this very important paper, because this gives us an opportunity to make a real considered decision about a public space protection order, specifically around alcohol in Tavistock and Oakhampton. And to just provide a little bit of background, I think the substantive background here that we all have to understand is that we're trying to prevent and reduce antisocial behaviour. We shouldn't see this as an issue of sort of moral panic. I think we all acknowledge that we're very lucky to be living in West Devon, and that most of the time we go about our lives being untroubled by antisocial behaviour. But we do have to be realistic that it exists. And Sergeant Thomas Otley, who has provided a lot of the evidence and support behind this paper, gave me the crime figures and the antisocial behaviour incident figures for Oakhampton and Tavistock over the last several years. And surprisingly perhaps, or not surprisingly, we saw quite a high rate during COVID, and then it reduced somewhat. But in Oakhampton, we have just over 220 antisocial behaviour incidents occurring during 2023 and 208 in 2024. In Tavistock, the figures are 205 and 200. We do have a number of antisocial behaviour incidents that are being recorded. And of course, this won't be all of the antisocial behaviour that goes on. We also have to recognise that antisocial behaviour affects the well-being of our communities and is most likely to affect those who are most vulnerable, those with fewer financial resources, the very old, those just making a start in the world as adolescents. So it's our duty to think very carefully about what we can do and what the police can do to reduce antisocial behaviour. But having said that, we also have to make sure that anything we do is proportionate. And we should not have a public space protection order unless there is clear evidence of antisocial behaviour and a belief that that is going to continue into the future. And that's why careful consideration was done and consultation with both Oakhampton and Tavistock Town Councils and with the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, and the public were given an opportunity as well to comment on this public space protection order. And it's the duty of local councils like our own to review this sort of legislation every 3 years. So what is in front of you, very specifically, is a recommendation that we have a public space protection order that is for the whole of Tavistock and for the whole of Oakhampton. Now, I must confess that when I first read a very early draft of this paper, I was surprised that they needed to cover the whole of those 2 towns. And so I asked for additional evidence. As I say, Mrs. Proctor's been very patient about redrafting the paper, and members will see on page 318 the crime heat maps for Oakhampton and Tavistock And this really provides the evidence for why we need to extend the existing public space protection order beyond just Tavistock Meadows to cover the whole of the built-up area of Tavistock and Oakhampton. And I know these heat maps can be a little bit difficult to interpret. This isn't all crimes. This is crimes that involve contact between a victim and an offender. So this isn't crimes of theft where there was nobody present. So this gives you a sense of the extent over the whole of Oakhampton and Tavistock. So coming to the end now and the real sort of nub of it, what will this public space protection order mean? What will it mean for our residents? As I say, it is to prevent, reduce antisocial behaviour. There will be no problem with people carrying on drinking alcohol on sort of feast days and in the summer with a picnic. There's no intention of prohibiting alcohol, but it does give the police additional powers to ask people to move on, to remove alcohol from them, to ask them to empty alcohol if it's clear that this is associated with antisocial behaviour. So this is a serious duty that we have, that we consider this, and I'm pleased that the paper has got good evidence in it and details the consultation. And there is also a demand that this will be renewed every 3 years. So we will get a chance to review it in 3 years' time. For those of you who are real pedants, you will notice that we need to change the date, because at the moment it says it's from November 2024. So unless any of us have got a time machine, I think we probably need to change the date on the draft of the public space protection order. But hopefully that's given people enough background to this paper, and I'm sure that Mrs. Proctor will be very pleased to answer any questions that members have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Elliott. That was really interesting and informative. And I have always been in favour of these orders. I'm very interested to see, particularly with the Oakhampton one, how dispersed it is, as opposed to Tavistock is not quite so dispersed, which is quite interesting to note. And I think from our police West Devon Matters meetings, that has become apparent from Oakhampton discussions, that people were moved out of the park and the main towns and then decided they'd all like to go into the side roads up onto housing estates, etc. And the police have been working on that. And that's particularly why they asked for it to cover every street, because if you move people, they just go somewhere else. We've all been young. We've all done maybe some of these things. You know, it's easy as a child just to run off and go somewhere else and do whatever you're doing. So I think it's quite interesting. I would like to thank Mrs. Proctor for her, I want to say due diligence, but I would say sheer determination yet again in this meeting to get this over the final hurdle. Because a lot of people or councillors have raised concerns about this document and what its intentions were. And we've gone to great lengths, and Sergeant Otley has been in to see members. I think Councillor Johnson and I were the only two that turned up for the whole of West Devon, which was very disappointing, but at least he had an audience for telling us why this was needed, and more importantly, how it would actually be policed. And I think that has been the bit that we've been able to get across to the wider membership of councillors of what the police were looking for out of this. And as Councillor Elliott has spelt out, it's not about going out and ruining somebody having a family picnic in a park or anything like that. It's nothing to do with that at all. It is literally to do with the responsibility and behaviour with alcohol. And if you are behaving responsibly Nobody's going to trouble you. Also, the fact that the police do not want to criminalise this. It's about education with young people and the impact that they have on others by the behaviour they're carrying out. So I think, thank you, Mrs. Proctor, and I think we do owe Sergeant Ockley a big thanks for his patience, although, bless him, his name's all wrong on page 318, but never mind. I'm sure that'll be fine. So does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Proctor or Councillor Elliott, please? No. Would you like to move your recommendation, please, Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Leader. So I would like to move the recommendation that Council resolves to agree the Tavistock and Oakhampton Public Space Protection Order as set out in Appendix A. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Fairburn.
Don't forget you have the amendment to be made to the date.
Oh.
So it's not as set out in the appendix.
Right.
Subject to that amendment to the date. Thank you.
The most important bit. Thank you, Mr. Fairburn. What would we do without you? Right. I'm happy to second that. Anybody wish to debate it? Councillor Moody, then Councillor Edmonds.
Just make a statement. Thank you very much for all the hard work that's gone in. I'm so glad we've got here eventually. I totally understood what the police were trying to do. And I applaud the police for providing that information. And everyone I talk to as well, there is still this message coming through that, oh, you won't be able to drink in the meadows on a sunny afternoon. And I keep saying to people, no, it is not prevention. It is just to stop the antisocial behaviour. It's the consumption of alcohol and antisocial behaviour together. But if you're having a great time and sitting in the sunshine, not a problem. But thank you.
Councillor Edmonds, please.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I fully support this. I think it is proportionate, and we've cited the family having a picnic with a glass of wine, and it's not aimed at them. Well, I would say I would look at that. I would turn that around and say that's exactly what it's about. It's ensuring that that family can enjoy the picnic with a glass of wine without it being jeopardised by someone, perhaps, who would choose to behave perhaps differently. So I'm sure the police will police this with common sense, and hopefully they'll, will ensure a good outcome and plenty of nice picnics over the summer months.
Hopefully we have the good weather, Councillor Edmonds.
Just a real quick, just to reiterate again, not one for saying what everybody else is saying, but I just think it's worth a mention to say thank you to all the hard work that went into this, because we were a few of us that were a bit doubting at the beginning, and now this covers everything, understanding the meaning of it, and it's a very good paper now, so thank you for that. I'm fully in favour.
Right, is that everybody done? Okay, all those in favour, please.
That's unanimous for the recommendation. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Proctor. I think you could go and have a well-earned drink in the meadows. Mrs. Henstock, you're coming to join us. And we already have Mrs. Buckle here and ready. So, Councillor Edmonds, are you ready?
I'm ready, Chair.
Off you go then.
Thank you. At the end of October 2024, the projected year-end surplus was £429,000. The end of January forecast has increased to £589,000, mainly due to better than expected Treasury management income and improved planning income. It's recommended to Council to transfer an additional £100,000 of the projected surplus to an earmarked reserve, in addition to the previously approved £300,000 for reinvestment in council plan delivery, leaving the remaining projected surplus of £189,000 to be transferred to unearmarked reserves. Budget variations are set out on page 348 of your agenda papers, with a narrative for each variation. Just briefly, salary savings are projected at 130,000 due to vacancies and service reviews. Investment income is expected to be £650,000 higher than budgeted due to higher than expected interest rates. Some budget areas, such as waste contract costs and homelessness accommodation costs, are experiencing increased expenditure. Section 7 of the report sets out the relevant management actions for the revenue expenditure and income variations. Adjustments have been made to future budgets to reflect current income and expenditure patterns, including increased targets for investment income and renewable energy business rates. Waste contract inflation and other operational costs will be kept under review, and relevant adjustments are being incorporated into next year's budget. As requested by members, a review of the Council's reserves has been undertaken, and total reserves are expected to be in the region of £11.4 million by the end of March 25, with £9.5 million in earmarked and £1.9 million in unearmarked reserves. So, in summary, Chair, the report presents a positive financial outlook for 24-25, with a significant surplus projected. The surplus is being invested into the Council plan, and further actions are underway to manage variations and ensure financial stability moving forward. Finally, Chair, 3 report recommendations, hopefully as shown on page 345 and on the screen, which I hope I've covered in my report introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Edmonds, Mrs Henstock and Mrs Buckle. Councillor Elliott, please.
Thank you. So thank you once again for a very clear report. I have a question just of clarity, because I know that this has excised some residents, and so I just thought it would be really helpful to surface it here about the garden waste costs. So what's slightly hidden in the report, if you aren't used to reading these reports, I'm becoming used to reading them, is that although, and so I'd just like to rehearse this and check that I've understood it properly. So although we've got about an additional £25,000 in revenue from the garden waste scheme, it's actually cost us £41,000 more than we were expecting because of the need for a new vehicle and more waste sacks. And therefore we would be making a loss on the garden waste scheme. Hence, we have increased the costs of the garden waste scheme for the coming year, because it's really important at this sort of time of difficulty across all local government that we're not subsidising people in terms of what is a discretionary garden waste scheme. So I can see lots of nods around the table, but I just wanted to check in on that, and if there's any additional comments on that.
I think we could easily say gold star, top of the class, because that is exactly it, Councillor Elliott. That is, yeah, and perfectly what it is. I don't know whether, no, Mrs Buckle's fine and Mrs Henstock's fine, so we don't need to add, so Councillor Moody.
Could I just say that also, even with the increase, we're on target for our contracts for garden waste uptake from residents. So I think the message has got out there that, you know, we've got to wipe our own nose, as it were, on the garden waste issue, and that we're doing it.
Any other questions, please? Councillor Edmonds, I was panning the room because I'd forgotten who was presenting. It was you. I was looking at Councillor Elliott, Councillor Mott, Councillor Moody, but actually it's you.
Did you want me to move the recommendation, Leader? Is that where we're going?
Yes, please, Councillor Edmonds.
I'm happily move the recommendation as shown on.
I'm happy to second that. Does anybody have any debate, please? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So I just think it's worth drawing attention to the very helpful paragraphs on the review of reserves, so 4.7, etc. So at an earlier meeting, at our last hub meeting, and you'll see recorded in the minutes that we specifically asked for there to be a review of reserves, because I know some of us were concerned that because we were doing really well on Treasury management, that money would just be put into reserves and we wouldn't be spending it directly and speedily. And I think this is a very helpful set of information and benchmarking us against nearby and comparable local authorities, and demonstrates that, as I read it, particularly because of the uncertainty around the budget in future years and the likelihood of a shortfall in the next 2 to 3 years, and quite a significant shortfall because of the lack of funding to local government, that it is very prudent of us to make sure that we have adequate reserves. But I suppose in the sort of spirit of debate, I would just like to emphasise that I think it's really important that we keep this under review, because if we continue to do well on Treasury management, and if the government allocations are not quite as stark as we're expecting them to be, I think it's vital that we spend money prudently and invest it, particularly around our priorities around housing, biodiversity, and being carbon neutral by 2030. So I'd just like to make that contribution. Thank you.
Okay, the Chief Executive would like to come in.
So thank you, Councillor Elliott, and I couldn't agree more, actually, with what you've said. I mean, that is the whole point, that this is a dynamic process and that we need to reflect the risks and opportunities. Of course, in the summer, we're expected to know a lot more about the multi-year financial settlement. At this point, we need to be prudent in taking account of what the medium-term financial settlement we think is going to come. If that changes, either upward or downward, we will cut our cloth accordingly. But I think the decision you've made in the previous report reflects the fact that where opportunity comes, we will invest back in the Council's plan. So hopefully that is helpful.
Councillor West, please.
Just going back to green bags, it's amazing what takes our attention, isn't it? I have had a number of people contact me around the increases. And I must admit, I gave up using the green bag last year, not because of the price increase, just because I was going to be coming into Tavistock more often to come to council meetings, so I could drop off at the tip at the same time. However, I have decided this year, or we, myself and my wife, have decided we are going to re-embark on using the scheme, even with the increase, because the amount of time I've sat outside the tip or in the tip waiting for people with the great big trailers they've got to offload there before you can do it, I think having thought, I can work around it, I am pleased to say that, well, not pleased to say, but I'm saying actually this scheme is superb value for money, both in time and in terms of, for me as hub lead, the cost of people travelling, all those cars travelling backwards and forwards to the tip. It just seems a great way of reducing that sort of carbon footprint from that. So, yes, I am sold on making sure that I will be doing it and carrying on in the future. So, thank you.
I think, in a way, for us as an authority and for our Green Waste Service, it's almost a benefit as to how appalling our county facility actually is in Tavistock, because even residents of Tavistock find it much better to actually get their green waste collected from their home than go through that awful pain of sitting there. And we had a councillor this morning who said he buys a sandwich before he goes there because he needs it. And I think another councillor commented about taking War and Peace. So it is a really good service, and, you know, long may it continue that people realise that actually it's much more effective to have it cleared, because you're not even putting the waste in your car and finding slug trails several months on in your car. And I think Councillor Bridgewater can attest to that more than most with his job that he does as a gardener, that knows that you find the slug trails forever. I would just like to say, I think I did comment on this somewhere, that the Treasury management, as we all know, is fantastic, but we do need to find another pot of money that somebody would like us to invest for them. Because that would be really handy, wouldn't it, Mrs. Buckle, if somebody was to give us another 15 million or so, just to ask us to look after. For us, fortunately, Oakhampton Interchange the work has commenced. Sadly for us, we have to start paying out and losing our big bucks. So I do understand we're due some more. Is it a bit later in the year?
Leader, we're due to get 3.8 million in the last week of March.
There we go, that keeps that pot a little higher. And thank you to those that attended the Treasury management last week, which Mrs. Scotland led on, and she did really well. And thank you, Councillor Edmonds, for that as well. Right, so, Councillor Edmonds. So you've moved, we've debated. All those in favour, please.
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. And then moving on to page 375. Councillor Edmonds, once again, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is the capital monitoring report. The report provides an update on the financial position of capital projects as at the end of January 25. It highlights that all projects are within their approved budgets, with £7.7 million profiled for 24-25, of which 3.4 million has been spent in the first 10 months. The main reason for the capital programme underspend is due to a government grant allocation for the Homes Upgrade Grant, or HUG funding, which will be spent in the run-up to the financial year end as grants are approved. In addition, funding for the Local Authority Housing Fund Round 3 will also be spent in the coming months as suitable properties are identified and purchased. The report also details Section 106 deposits totaling £1.3 million, with £198,000 spent so far on various projects. And a comprehensive summary of the capital budget is set out for you in Appendix A, and the report recommendation is that the HUB Committee resolves to endorse the contents of the capital programme monitoring report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Does anybody have any questions, please? No? Would you like to move your recommendation then, please?
I move the recommendation, which I've just read out, actually, is on the screen.
Sorry, Councillor Edmonds. Would anybody wish to debate?
You second it.
I'll second. Anybody wish to debate? Councillor West, please.
It's just an observation that it's great we're in this situation, that we're on track, we're within budget, we know where we're going. Just proves how well it's working, the team's working across the whole council and that. So I think that needs to be applauded from that point of view. I'm very pleased to see that it looks like we're going to get a lot of our HUG money at the wire, but we're going to do it. And I sincerely hope we get opportunities in the future, because we were talking about housing policy and how we can bring houses up to scratch. One of my biggest concerns, and I know it has been debated within the council, is the fact that whatever the word is, housing associations selling off uneconomic properties and not replacing them. I have asked officers to actually talk to housing associations to see if they're able to use fundings like this or a version of it to actually improve some of the houses they're looking to off-sell, in the view to try and keep some of that stock within the actual housing stock we've got available for social housing and that. So I just hope that we do have the opportunity next year in the coming years to make sure that that HUG funding is there and we can make use of it to upgrade housing and support our housing stock. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? No? May I see a show of hands then, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous for the noting. Thank you, Leader.
Sorry, if I could now move us into part 2, please.
No. It's only the appendix in part 2.
Oh, right, okay. Councillor Edmonds then, please.
Yep. Thank you,
Mrs. Edmonds.
Leader. I'll just
Hello, Mrs.
wait for
Hotchkiss.
Mrs. Hotchkiss to take her seat. Yep, this is the bad debt write-off report, and it covers the period from the 1st of October to the 31st of December 2024. Total debts written off, £31,054 and a penny. This includes a council tax debt in excess of £5,000, which requires Hub Committee approval for write-off in line with financial regulations. Details of the debt are set out in Appendix A, which is a what happened there? A summary of debt written off is detailed in Section 3 of the report, including write-offs by financial year. It also compares the cases and amounts against the corresponding quarter of the previous financial year. The primary reason for council tax and non-domestic rate write-offs remains insolvency. The report provides a positive update on arrears collection from previous years and confirms that debts are only written off after all collection efforts have been exhausted. Moving forward, the Council will report quarterly on debt write-offs to maintain firm control over outstanding debts. The report recommendations are that the Hub Committee notes the write-off of individual debts authorised by the Section 151 officer and approves the write-off of the individual debt shown in Appendix A of the report.
I hope if anybody had any questions about that, they've consulted Mrs. Hotchkiss before the meeting, so we don't need to move into part 2. Does anybody have any questions, please? No? That's really good. So I'm happy to second Councillor Edmonds. Any debate, anybody? All those in favour, please.
That's unanimous for the two recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, everyone. And that concludes the meeting within just about the hour.